Hi, friends. Uh, Thanks for coming and hanging out with me. I know it's been a little while, and I apologize for that. I don't know how consistent my schedule is going to be for the rest of the summer. I'm trying to figure that out. I thought it was going to be pretty straightforward. That the rest of my summer was pretty clear, but it's looking like there actually might be some things that come up, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to fit everything together. But regardless, in the meantime, in the time that I have and am available, it's I'm glad to be doing this kind of thing and hanging out with you guys. Airheart was really cool. I liked Airheart. I'm eager to see sort of how it progresses, and I'm curious what the developers feel like is still to come. But sorry, it's also having a hard time closing. There we go. There's a really nice. I didn't get to show this because it sort of popped up at the very beginning before the game started. But there's a really nice like release notes interface in this game that I've never seen before. That was both sort of modularized. It was sort of packaged in a really digestible way by sort of component. So, here's we have done something technically to the engine to improve it in a specific way, and that was sort of a data point. That was a piece of information that was conveyed, and then we've added this enemy and that has these certain characteristics. I mean, I guess I'm describing the bullet points in any changelog, in any sort of in that you would see in another game like this. It's really just the way that they were presented as a stack of cards that you could sort of click through, and they would swipe away, and they were very visual and very juicy. They had a juiciness to them that reading them and reading through them felt gamey, felt playful in a way that reading a changelog has never felt for me before. So that was also really cool. Clearly, the developer has a very strong sense of interactive aesthetics, of the sort of dynamics of game elements, and I appreciate that very much. From what I could see, it seemed like it was a lot of maintenance sort of work, technical improvements, bug fixes, and then adding types of enemies, adding variety to the game. And I'm curious if this is a game that has a larger structure, if there's sort of like a are there major pieces that have yet to be implemented, or is the game as it is pretty much what it will be, and we're now working on sort of filling it out, essentially. I don't have a great sense of that, but I'm curious. I'd be curious to know. All right, let's look at Q&A stuff. It looks like Eve had some questions, and there aren't a lot of other questions. So I think we'll go through this pretty quick. And then, do I have show and tell? Oh, maybe I do, actually. Let's see. All right. I actually love this question, Eve, so thank you. Do you feel like the two mechanics, gliding around horizontally with grace versus plummeting down with little control, convey the right feeling for each of those parts of the loop? First of all, I love that you've identified how the different control schemes are not just formally different, but have such a different experience to them. I feel like this question really articulates that in a way that I hadn't, that is very powerful. So I had said that I really enjoyed the fishing part of the game when there weren't enemies around, just gliding, and looking for fish and catching up on fish, catching up with, chasing down fish, or cutting through their schools. All of that stuff is really cool. Although I still think that the sound effect can be improved, but there is something idyllic about that. It feels remarkably like fishing, like or at least the sort of cultural platonic ideal of fishing, of calmly, lazily is too strong, but sort of serenely, I guess, serenely, patiently, existing in a beautiful natural environment, waiting, and hunting, but like hunting in a particular way. There's a calmness to the idea of fishing, and I feel like this game captures that really, really well in the moments where all you're doing is fishing. I think that's super cool. Obviously, that's not all you do in the sort of horizontal levels. You're also I would actually, and maybe this distinction is uninteresting, but to me it seems like you're doing two specific things. One of them is dogfighting, and the other one is bullet helling. Is sort of just existing in a space where you're dodging hazards that are all around, and those things don't have the same serenity, although there is also like serene grace to getting into a flow state of the bullet hell, and some things that I really liked about that are, even though the world felt very limited and constrained to me at the beginning, when I sort of expected, this is a game about planes, I'm going to be able to fly really far distances, and then I felt very bounded. I got used to that, and thinking about the game in comparison to what I think of at least as a typical bullet hell, it is expansive. It's not a single screen or that sort of very constrained, often claustrophobic space. I felt like if I was in a particularly bad spot, I could probably fly to the other side of the level and get away from some of that. That's particularly emphasized by like the turrets that stay stationary, and so you can easily find a space where there aren't any turrets, and that feels safer than and you have less to deal with than if you're in between two turrets. And then the dogfighting, is kind of a grindy thing. Like, the tension of the game is in finding a balance between hunting fishing at a level where you are not going to get destroyed, where you are capable of holding your own, living through the bullet hell, surviving attacks from planes that have it out for you, being able to take down enemies that when that's necessary, in order to score the highest possible points from your fishing, but not obviously pushing beyond that line to where you can't hold your own, because then you will be killed, and you don't want that. The penalties for that are extremely severe. So if you're playing it conservatively, all of the bullet hell, all of the dogfighting is against enemies that you can handle, that your plane is equipped to do. And so you get to sort of maintain that sort of graceful feeling. Also, you have a lot of health in this game. A lot of roguelikes have extremely limited health, or often like one-hit kill systems. And at least in the first 5 levels of this, I did die very, very quickly when I went too high. But I feel like most of the game that I played, I had quite a lot of warning between when I was taking severe damage and when it was too late for me to turn back. So all of that put together makes all of that horizontal section feel particularly calm, particularly serene. Not always specifically from moment to moment, but in general, it maintains that sort of experience more than, or it emphasizes that experience, I guess, that emotional tenor. Then the return home, and especially the last ditch don't lose the game mechanics. Now you are not only moving in a different direction, you're moving along a different axis. Your controls are different. So I still don't feel like I totally got a handle on the last ditch don't die mechanic, that system, but the system for returning home, completely different movement. Even though you're still looking at your plane from the third person, it's still approximately the same size. Obviously it's facing a different direction. Now you're sort of rushing into the screen rather than gliding across it, but your position, your visual relationship to the plane is pretty much the same. You no longer have any of the control that you used to have to move around the space that you can see. And now you're extremely constrained, not just to this area, but actually to a line, to you only have linear movement at that point. It's mapped to a circle, so obviously it wraps around, and visually it's more interesting than just a one-dimensional game. But you are playing a one-dimensional game at that point. You can only move in 2 directions, left and right, forward and back, clockwise and counterclockwise. So that feels much, much more constrained. It also is chaotic. You've got the clouds coming up that block your view, and then even without the clouds, the islands that rush up that you have to dodge, the rocks that you're dodging, often seem to take kind of a curved parabolic path, and so it's not easy, or at least I found it sometimes difficult to properly judge where they were going to intersect the ill-defined plane of the space where my craft actually was. So I feel, much more, it feels more random. It feels less controlled. It feels much more constrained. It does sort of feel claustrophobic in a way, although it is also, it's a claustrophobia that is attached to like a high speed, and claustrophobia really is the wrong word. It is a constraint that is born of just sort of not being able to reach outside of yourself, rather than feeling like you are being closed in. Visually, it's open air. It feels like there's a lot of space. I just can't get to it. It's modeling this sort of like spiral, the plane going into a death spiral, and the lack of control, the inability to straighten it out. It does that really well. So I just restated the question in a lot of words, but I think the question was, did those two different experiences convey the right feeling for each of those parts of the loop? Those being essentially the going out and coming back parts. And I think it's super interesting. It's unlike other roguelike games that I've experienced, and let me not use that term, because that's not important to this point. It's unlike other games that have this this kind of a loop, this kind of a home base, go out and come back sort of a loop. It's not what I typically think of, and it's not what I would expect from a game like this. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, I was going to say Tag, but Ghost in the Graveyard, which is a variant of hide and seek, or Tag. I'm actually maybe misremembering some of the rules, because the hide and seek part is not the part that I'm remembering, but there are variants of Tag where there's a safe place. I think this is how Ghost in the Graveyard works. I'm going to describe a game which may or may not actually be Ghost in the Graveyard, but it doesn't matter, because Ghost in the Graveyard is a folk game and it's played differently in different places. So there's no way that you could know whether this variant is actually a game somewhere. So this is a children's game. It's a field game, and it's a folk game. It's not. It was not designed. It doesn't have a known author. Let's say that. It's been around for a long time. It gets passed down generation to generation, and like sardines and some of these other things, it is a variant of hide and seek. In this game, some of the players hide, and some of the players are seeking them, are trying to sort of find all of the players who are hidden, and bring them all home. And one player is a ghost. It's actually maybe it's just the ghost that hides. I don't remember what the point of the game is, if that's the case. But my point is that there's a home base, there's a safe space, and if you tag up, then you cannot be killed by the ghost. But there's something that is driving you. I think it's trying to find all of your friends to leave that safe space and go out and like explore the field, explore the area where the game is being played. The experience of this game, like Airheart, is in loops of sort of traveling out and back. And like Airheart, the experience of traveling out has a serenity to it. It is fraught with tension because the game is played in the dark. Forgot that part. Late at night. So you are sort of exploring a large outdoor space at night. You don't know what is there. You don't know what you're going to find. You are looking for people and things, and you know that there is someone out there who is trying to get you. So there's a lot of tension as you go out, but going out there's also a stillness to it. You are trying to be quiet. You may be with other people, in which case you are all collectively trying to be quiet. You are scouring the area, you're looking, you're hunting, much like in Airheart, you're fishing, you're looking for the valuable things. You're like trying to figure out where the ghost might be hiding and avoiding those areas. But there's sort of a stillness to it. You move very slowly, you move very quietly. It's a very perceptive sort of a game until you see the ghost. And as soon as you see the ghost, you turn around and run back towards safety as fast as you can, and probably shout to warn other people that the ghost is around. That's the game that comes to mind when I think about the play loop in Airheart. Typically in digital games, the play loop that have this sort of structure, the play loop that I'm used to is traveling outward. This is a sort of like campaign style adventure, right? Traveling outward is action, is like lots of fighting, lots of killing enemies, like pushing your way forward, moving the lines. And then at some point you will say, okay, I'm done. I've gone as far as I want to go. Let's go back to base. That's often like a quick travel. That's like travel back to base. It just happens. There's nothing to it. If there's something to it in a game like, okay, I just played Persona 5, right? Persona 5 also has, it's not exactly this structure. I mean, it's obviously not exactly the structure. It's a very different kind of game. But there are, within the part of that game that deals with dungeons, the structure is that you can save your game at a safe room. And in between safe rooms, you encounter enemies. And if the enemies kill you, then you have to go back to your last save, which just you could do at a safe room. You can also travel freely from safe rooms to safe rooms that you've explored. So you can move very quickly around the dungeon or the part of the dungeon that you've explored, but only if you're at this network of safe rooms. And as soon as you leave the safety of that, now you are vulnerable, not only because enemies exist and can find you and you have to fight them, but also sort of the further you get from a safe room, the more you have to lose. Uh, Enemies are maybe getting stronger as you go, and so maybe the way is getting harder. But also, like, all of the experience that you've racked up, all of the ground that you've covered, all of that is at risk if you die. And so sometimes you play the game as sort of pushing from safe room to safe room, and they're spaced out like pretty reasonably, so you know there will be one coming up. If you feel, if you know you're leveled well enough, essentially, then you can sort of just do that. But some of the time you basically are treating a safe room as a home base, and you're pushing out from it, clearing an area, and then retreating so that you can save your game. And in Persona 5 at least, I'm pretty sure the same was in 4, there's no random encounters. There are things that cause enemies to respawn in the areas where they've been, but for the most part, for at least big chunks of the dungeon, I know, we'll go through this quickly, right? This is typical for me. There's big chunks of the dungeon where once you clear a passageway, that it remains clear, and you can actually, partially navigate that way. Are there shadows here? Then this is something that I haven't done yet. There might be treasure down here too. Are there no shadows here? Then this is an area that I've already cleared, and it's a path back to safety. And you essentially, like, once you reach the point where you've made that decision, okay, I want to heal up, or I want to save my game. Mostly it's I want to save my game. I want to, like, secure all of the progress that I've made, at least in terms of collecting treasure and experience and all of those things. Then you go back to the safe room, and passage back to the safe room is there's no tension associated with it because that path is already clear. So that's a very different experience than Airheart, where you are making a very similar sort of decision. Okay, have I pushed my luck far enough? Is now the time to go back and essentially, in some sense, save my progress, turn all of this fish oil into money, and take the opportunity to improve my situation and go back to safer hunting grounds. But to do that, I actually have to pass through a more dangerous, I mean, maybe not more dangerous in an objective sense, because even if you hit rocks on the way down, it takes a lot to kill you. Like, they do very little damage to you. But more dangerous in the sense of how it feels. The experience is much more dangerous. It's much more harrowing. It's actually, in a lot of ways, higher tension than the game of fishing in a bullet hell. So yes, I like that. I feel like Airheart is very deliberate about how it constructs those two experiences and the way that it structures that core loop of going out and back again to be a different kind of a decision than a game like Persona, for example. A lot of action RPGs, have that kind of fight on your way out and then retreat through empty hallways. There's a question about the difference between early access games and demos. I said, I don't typically do early access games on play-by-play. I actually don't play a ton of early access games myself, unless I find them especially compelling, mostly because I have a long enough list of games to play that I feel justified in waiting for games to be completed, by which I mean the developer has sort of said, this is the product that we intended. I'm often interested in games not just as like a thing to do that is enjoyable, or a lot of games are social experiences, or water cooler talk, and all of that has value. But I am often particularly interested in games as artistic expressions, as like works that have been sort of put into the world that makes some kind of statement about anything, about a particular way of looking at things, about a particular relationship between things, about a worldview, or just a dynamic that the author was interested in. And I feel like games as those kinds of experiences get diluted when you play them before the creator has sort of had a chance to package it, to finish it and create something that frames it in the way that they intend. Anyway, that's sort of my take on early access. There's certainly nothing wrong with it. I would use it as a development technique. I think it's great that people get to be a part of the development of games. That's really valuable. It doesn't especially appeal to me for some reasons. The reason that I have a hard time answering this question, comparing early access to demos, is that there's not really a standard for what a demo is. Demos can take a lot of forms. There are a lot of strategies for how you produce a demo. I mean, I guess the difference that this question is sort of getting at is that you would typically produce a demo as a perspective on a game that is larger than the demo, right? The demo is a slice of something, and so presumably that something is either completed or at least more completed than the demo is. And to that extent, I guess, yes, demos that are produced as part of the marketing for a game that is done are like trailers. Well, I mean, a lot of the time, the creative vision behind a movie, for example, has nothing to do with the production of a trailer, unless you think about the sort of larger studio structure that ends up making movies as being somehow authorial, which I think is a fair way of looking at things, but you also have to take into account the many other factors that go into decision making at that level. Anyway, a demo I do see as being sort of like a part of the packaging. It's actually a part of the framing of a game, and so that is much more interesting to me than a game that is just in progress, that hasn't had the opportunity to be framed yet, or where the framing is sort of necessarily his slipshod because spending energy on framing, on packaging, on tutorializing a game that is not yet fully designed, because it's not yet fully developed, because design is iterative, is wasted effort. Yeah, I guess in that sense I am more interested in demos. Yeah, I'll say that. Okay, just not a lot more questions. If the harpoon were on its own button, would you use it more? Say to toss enemies out of your way or swing around an island. I would never use it to swing around an island. All of my experiences of using it on islands have been terrible. So maybe that is a thing that a more experienced player can and would do, but that just sounds like way more dangerous, unpredictably dangerous than it's worth to me. I mean, this is a good question. I don't know. This is the sort of thing that I think you would have to do experimentally. You'd have to like put the harpoon on a button and see how players play, because the danger that I think is really, really very significant is that without a reminder, which really the UI element at the top center of the screen that shows my gun is a reminder that I have more than one gun. And without that, there's a real danger that I would never use the harpoon, that I would that it would leave my sort of limited short-term kinetic memory. And then I would forget that it was an option, in the heat of the moment. Whereas now I feel like there's there's a barrier to using the harpoon. I have to think about it consciously and turn off my regular gun, which is useful, and switch to a different thing. And so I'm more likely to switch to the harpoon and use the harpoon a whole bunch, and then switch back to the gun and not use the harpoon at all, and then switch back. But I also think that that's part of the intention, is that the harpoon is extremely useful in particular cases, but it also it has an opportunity cost of you can't use a real gun while you're using the harpoon, and that feels super deliberate to me, and it's something that I recognize and feel like I'm taking advantage of. When I see other planes harpooning fish, they look vulnerable to me because I see them using their harpoon, and I think that's a plane that doesn't have its guns out. So even if it's not a huge thing, I can switch between them very quickly. From a practical standpoint, I think it does sort of match that feeling. Okay. How does this game compare to The Flame in the Flood? I am unfamiliar with The Flame in the Flood. I will look that up. I don't know that game at all. I really enjoy this perspective on playing games as art, but sometimes fully engaging with a game intellectually and analytically can be exhausting, almost making play a chore. Have you ever felt this? Yes, certainly. And playing games the way that I play them for this show is exhausting. It's different than the way that I play games when I play games for fun. I am still very interested in the sort of analytical element, but when I play a game for fun, it tends to be much more retrospective. It's partially because I can allow myself to become lost in the moment because I'm not talking to a camera, and partially because it is exhausting to do, and so it's much easier to just kind of let the experience wash over me. When I play games on my own, I often will just sort of play them. I don't know about unthinkingly, but more the way that you think about just playing games and playing games in a more relaxed manner. Let's say that. And then I enjoy reflecting upon the experience of having played the game and thinking about how it was structured and thinking about how it was designed. And then sometimes coming back to it the next time with some of that as context for my play, but then playing it is more passive. So yeah, I guess the answer to that is yes. I am familiar with that. I have experienced that. I'll relate this to watching movies or television, because I am currently watching the third season of Twin Peaks. There is media, and there are certainly directors who produce media that is challenging to view. And when I say that, what that really means is that it is difficult. It is difficult, or it is unrewarding to watch something like Fire Walk with Me, or the third season of Twin Peaks, or Mulholland Drive, to watch that passively, to watch that in a relaxed mode, to just absorb the experience, is either sort of disconcerting or bewildering, and can be visually rewarding at times. Like there are moments of it that even without thinking about it very much, you can say that is a beautiful shot. Like that image looks nice. This is haunting. Or this is just interesting. But a lot of the time, that's not your reaction. Your reaction is, what is happening? I don't even understand. It's incomprehensible. It's not fun. And so a lot of actually David Lynch's work, what I find really interesting about that is I don't think it's that inaccessible. And Twin Peaks is a great example of something that is not really designed to be inaccessible. I think anybody who is interested, who approaches that work actively and analytically and tries to read it actively rather than just sort of watching it passively, you're not going to be bewildered. I mean, you might at some things, but it is a much more fun sort of experience. You can have fun. You can enjoy the experience of watching that show. I mean, parts of it are real bad, but in general, but it takes effort. It is not passive. It is not relaxing. It is work to do. And I think the same is true of games. Like, there are games that you can play that you can just zone out and relax and play the game relatively passively, not think a lot about it, and enjoy that and wind down. And there are games that make it very difficult to play in that mode, which doesn't make them less fun as games, but it does probably make it more work and more effort and sometimes exhausting to play those games, and so you don't play them for long stretches in order to relax and chill out. You play them in shorter bursts, in intense bursts, when you are sort of well rested enough to do it. Interesting follow-up question of how does one manage turning off analytical portion of the brain just to play something entirely for fun? I don't think that's the problem that I have, actually. So maybe I don't know how to answer this question. For me, and for I think a lot of people, the challenge is actually developing the ability to activate the analytical part of your brain continuously and consciously while you are playing the game or watching a TV show or watching a movie. That is something that for me like required training and requires sort of exercise. Like if I stop doing it, then I lose some of the ability to do it. I took a class in grad school on visual storytelling that was a lot about composition and cinematography. And part of that class was very intensively watching movies in class, and then being quizzed on elements of the composition and how it related to the narrative of the movie. And so doing that, going through sort of the intensive training of that, made it so that then when I went out and watched movies, I was able to do the same thing. I was able to sort of watch very actively, think about the composition of scenes, think about the cinematography and how it relates to storytelling. And I enjoyed that very much. In the years since I took that class, my capacity for that has diminished, and now it takes a lot more effort for me to try to do that. And I have a lot harder time doing it over long periods. So like a 2-hour movie, I absolutely could not keep that up for that amount of time. But the inverse, the sort of like turning it off and just watching something passively or playing a game for fun has never been as much of a problem for me. I think doing this kind of analytical work takes a lot of effort. And so it's really a matter of just not making that effort. And that's fairly straightforward for me. And that said, I think that like the thing that you hear about is that there are people who learn about story structure or something like that, and it ruins movies for them because they can never not think about movies in terms of story structure. And that's a different phenomenon that tends to be more reflective. So it's less about sitting in the theater and not being able to keep yourself from thinking about things that you don't want to be thinking about, and more about sort of just not being able to ignore things that diminish your enjoyment of a movie. Although, frankly, for me, like, I have always found enjoyment in that kind of recognition and analysis, so I also don't have that problem. What was your favorite part of Disney World? It was the fireworks show at Magic Kingdom, which is very similar to the fireworks show at Disneyland, which obviously I've gotten to see several times because I go there all the time. But is, I think, a significantly different show. And also the castle at Disneyland, by virtue of that park being just scaled up so significantly, the castle is a much bigger canvas than the castle at Disneyland is. And when I saw the fireworks show at Disney World, I had a much better vantage point than I typically do, than I have in the past at Disneyland. So I was standing right up very close to the castle. And the fireworks show is it's very nice. It's very good, actually. It's well done. It has some like technical innovation to it that is neat. It's a good high production value show. The fireworks show is great, but it's mostly just like a fireworks show. But along with it, they do projection mapping on the castle, which means that they have projectors, probably a lot of projectors, throwing an enormous amount of light at the castle from different angles that are all coordinated to seamlessly project the same image over that space. And so it effectively just digitally paints the entire surface of the castle with light. And then this show animates the way that the castle is painted. And in the most spectacular, dramatic moments, it would, in a burst, change the color. And when I say change the color, I don't mean like from blue to yellow. I mean from like an ornate, intricate, complex design that is, that is based in yellow, but has like blues and has accents and detail that would sort of explode upward from the ground into an entirely different design with a dramatically different color palette and an entirely different set of filigree and details. That was spectacular. I mean, that was like one of the most magical transformations that I've ever seen, and they do it sort of over and over again in time with the music and the fireworks. And it's my favorite kind of magic that is not about the sort of mystery of how it's done. Like, I understand reasonably well how projection mapping works. I understand well enough to satisfy myself how they achieved that effect. But the effect of it, and in this enormous structure that you see and you feel the presence of. It is huge and it has weight. And earlier in the day you walked around it and you walked through it, and it is before your eyes being transformed in like what feels like a fundamental way. And of course, they're very good at animation, and so they a huge part of that is the animation of that transition. Feels incredibly good. That was my single favorite part. There was a lot that was really, really cool. The Seven Dwarfs ride, which we do not have here in Disneyland, is awesome and fascinating. Did some dark rides that I haven't seen before that were really cool and did interesting and different things. Just seeing how some of the rides that are the same there and here are done differently, are either have different elements or are just packaged differently, like the line experience is different. All of that was really cool. The whole thing was really cool. Okay. All right, I just have to. Would this game be better with Gyarados in it? Gyarados, which is a Pokemon, and it's an interesting choice because I think that's a water type Pokemon, and this game. Oh, I guess because of the fish. Oh, that's interesting. I was thinking like as a dragon enemy, but I'm curious. We didn't really get to experience the whale. There was a promise of a whale in this game, and it seems like it's a rare thing that like you have to sort of treat differently. That's a type of fish, but you have to sort of weaken it and then harpoon it and then drag it down back home with you. And that's fascinating. That, to me, I think hits a lot of the notes that I would imagine a water dragon would hit. Appropriately, I guess, since the Leviathan, the sort of the whale, is one of the major mythological influences on the idea of dragons. The other implication of that is that there are Pokemon in this game, and it's rough because Pokemon, the sort of like explore and collect and evolve and battle genre, although I haven't really played Pokemon, that genre is a genre that very much appeals to me in a way that, twin stick shooters and roguelike games don't as much. So I would say yes, but also just sort of on principle that, oh no, I can't say adding Pokemon to any game is going to make it better. And yet, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen someone add Pokemon to a game and have it not improve the game. Like, AAA games, there's danger in AAA games. AAA games often sort of stumble into this danger of over-designing, of creating too many systems and subsystems and ancillary systems that don't enhance the main action of the game. They just distract from it. There's a meme that's been going around this week that's really interesting, that's about one of the more recent Deus Ex games, and the fact that you get a very small amount of experience every time you hack a terminal in the game. And so there's an anecdote, purportedly from a player, that they felt compelled to hack every console they could find, because every console that they hacked gave them a small but visible experience boost. And so there are parts of the game towards the end where you go through like rooms that are just full of computers. And this player said that they've got like close to the end of the game and never finished it because they just were so exhausted and bored of the like repetitious hacking of computers for minor experience bonus, but they felt like they had to do it, like they felt compelled to do it. So rather than not hacking computers anymore and just finishing the game, they stopped playing. And I have had experiences like that. I relate to that. I think that more often, especially if I were capable of articulating my feelings the way that this person did, I would be more likely to just like stop hacking computers and finish the goddamn game, and maybe not be happy about it, but do it. But I certainly relate to that feeling. So there's a danger in over designing games of putting systems into Assassin's Creed. I think walks a line, and I have actually not really played much beyond Assassin's Creed 2. So I don't know where that series is today. But in Assassin's Creed 2, they introduce a lot of ancillary systems. And some of them I really, really like, and some of them I really, really don't care about. And for the most part, I felt like I was able to ignore the ones that I didn't care about. But even so, they distract from the core of the game. That is done to try to appeal to a broader base of players. Everybody can find something that they're interested in. But I think the danger is that you are distracting from the thing that is interesting about your game. And if you do too much of that, then people lose interest in your game. So would Airheart be better if I were like looking for and collecting little monster pets? Yeah, probably. Would Airheart be better if I were battling little monster pets against each other? I don't know how that would work, but maybe? Now I'm thinking about Pazak, which is a sort of infamous example of a mini-game from Knights of the Old Republic. And it was just a card game that like a poker style card game, very abstract card game, but actually a collectible card game, where you could find and buy cards throughout the world as you played the game, as you played KOTOR, and then in like taverns and cantinas, you would find people that you could play against, and you could bet money on Pazak games. And I always felt like that was like such a ridiculous distraction from the game itself. It had no relationship to anything else in the game, and I found it not at all interesting. And I'm guessing that's how you would integrate like a Pokemon system in Airhearts, is that you would have either somebody back at I've already forgotten the name of your home base, but back at home base that you would battle your monster pets against, or you would sort of encounter people at waypoints between levels, I guess, which would really disrupt the flow of moving continuously from level to level, and the amping up of the bullet hell as you do that. So that might be an example. This might be a game that would be worse off with Gyarados in it. Gyarados. Okay. That's it. I'm done. What do I have? I got something real quick. If I can find it. I got this card game called Nacho Chips. That is the game that I am going to be playtesting on Saturday at Cardboard Camp. I put up the link on Twitter earlier today, but it's cardboard.camp. And it's a semi-monthly semi-seasonally organization, like group meetup that I run with some other folks, Jesse Vigil and Asher Volmer, and just there's a small group of us who organize sort of like opportunities to play test tabletop games. So if anybody is in Los Angeles and wants to come to Cardboard Camp and play some in development games, go to cardboard.camp and sign up for the newsletter and check out the schedule. But I'm super excited to play this game, which is about eating nachos. Not competitive eating, but eating competitively. I think it's fun. I'm going to find out on Saturday if it's fun. If it's fun, then I'll make sure you guys have an opportunity to play it at some point. Cool. All right. Have a great night. Thanks for joining me. It's wonderful to be back. Yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow for after class, normal time, and then next week I think for another episode of Play by Play. This was fun. I'm glad I'm here again. All right. Have a great night. Bye.